What's the craziest demand from like a high roller or a VIP that you had to scramble to fulfill?
We bought a life-size replica of a cow.
How much do you have to spend at a casino hotel to be considered a VIP? Scott Morris has overseen purchasing at some of the biggest hotels, casinos, and venues in Las Vegas, which means Scott has seen some of the craziest things that have happened and stayed in Vegas. How much good food goes to waste at a buffet versus a regular restaurant?
Buffets are a challenge.
So you're telling me if I'm a vendor and I want to win a casino's business on the strip, one of the possible ways is to lose millions of dollars at the casino.
Absolutely.
And they'll buy from me.
Yeah, I got to buy everything that goes on the jets and the yacht, but I never get to get on the yacht or on the jets. If you have, 3,000 hotel rooms, the amount of toilet tissue that comes through is truckloads and truckloads and truckloads. One of the craziest ones I ever dealt with.
Hi there, and welcome to Roll with Steve. Before we get started, a quick favor. If you enjoyed these conversations, hit that subscribe button and join our community. I've got a bold goal to grow this channel to 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. And together, I know we can make that happen. So I appreciate your support. My commitment to you is to create new content weekly with talented guests that will help you grow personally and professionally. Also, drop a comment with your thoughts. I read every single one. If you find value here, a quick like or share helps others find the show. Thanks, and let's roll into today's episode. What's the craziest demand from like a high roller or a VIP that you had to scramble to fulfill in your role as a director of purchasing?
There were some very interesting ones. I know at the Hard Rock, we had, the entertainment venue was called The Joint. Great concert venue, small. I think the farthest seat from the stage was like 200 feet away, and so had some great bands that came through there. And we would have to buy, what the bands wanted in their dressing room, in the green room. And there were bands that wanted certain liquors that you could only buy in like Canada or Europe, and there was bands that wanted just green M&Ms, that's a real thing. People would do that. So literally people were picking out M&Ms or trying to just find green M&Ms. One of the craziest ones I ever dealt with was when I worked at one of the Station Casinos properties, and one of the high rollers wanted Irish whiskey. So we had some Irish whiskey, and we went and got a bottle of it, and it was like a 15-year version of this Irish whiskey, and we got it to the gentleman who wanted it, and he lost his mind and said, "This is not what I wanted. How dare you give this to me?" Which I did not know at the time, but now I understand. Of course, in Ireland, there's Protestant and Catholic.
Okay.
And they don't get along very well, and they fought wars for years over it. And apparently, one of the religions drinks one Irish whiskey, and one of the religions drinks the other. And I gave him the wrong Irish whiskey, and he was livid. They actually called me to come see the guy, not the food and beverage person, not the beverage manager. They called me to come out to speak to this guy, and he lit me up in front of everybody on the casino floor. And I had no idea. And I was like, so I ran out and bought him a bottle of the other product and took it to him so he would be happy. And he spent a considerable amount of money at the property. So it was someone we wanted to take care of. But I had no idea that there was one that would offend somebody and one that wouldn't. Irish whiskey was Irish whiskey to me. But I learned very quickly what the difference was between the two. So that was one of the craziest.
How much do you have to spend at a casino hotel to be considered a VIP where you're buying things specifically for them?
It's really different in, the different properties. Obviously, some of the, like Boulder Station or something would be much different than if you were at the Cosmo or whatever. But there are people who spend tons of money that they cater to. I mean, there are people, I dealt with vendors, which I didn't think was the bestest thing in the world, but players that were vendors as well, that I had to buy things from.
Interesting.
That they had really good relationships with the property, and these people spent a lot of money, and we bought things from this vendor, specifically, I think because of their play. And I actually had these people call me and say, "Hey, can you make sure my marker gets paid so I can have the money to buy the product you want so I can get it to you?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." So
you're telling me if I'm a vendor and I want to win a casino's business on the Strip, one of the possible ways is to lose millions of dollars at the casino.
Absolutely.
And they'll buy from me.
Well, not necessarily means it will happen, but it has happened, and I've had to do it at different properties,
that is
different
wild.
Individuals, and some were really good, and it wasn't a big deal, and some were not good, and bought things that we had to go back and fix and redo, and but we still were told that's who we had to buy the product from.
Wow. And that comes all the way from the top.
Oh, big time. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Speaking of vendors, you ever had a vendor try to bribe you to get you? What did that look like?
You know, it's crazy. I know, especially like when I started at the Hard Rock was a different management company that had taken over from the management company that had been there. So I don't know if people realize that, you know, these management companies can change at a property. I think when I was at Hard Rock, we had 3 different people that managed the property.
Wow.
Maybe 4 while I was there. Kind of the same thing at the Virgin. Initially, Virgin managed it, and then the owners ended up managing it at JC Hospitality, I think. But it becomes, you know, when it first switches, I've had people come in and go, "Oh yeah, I'm your chemical vendor. I'm the one you buy all your chemicals from. So yeah, we've got a contract. We have a written contract for you. You have to buy my chemicals." And I was like, "Well, that's okay." I was like, let me see the contract. Well, it's not really like a contract, like a written contract. It was kind of like a handshake. I'm like, no. And they're like, and then they would, you know, this little envelope, like, "Yeah, you know, this is how we do things." I'm like, "That's not how we do things." And I would literally call security to come have people exit, removed from the property, exited from the property. So it happens. You know, it's not earlier in my career. I think it happened more than later. I don't think that happens much anymore. I know there's people that offer, you know, you have to be very careful because, you know, people offer tickets. Say you want to go to a Knights game, you want to go to a Raiders game. I got a suite in Allegiant. And I usually turn all the, you know, I turn that down. I'll call my boss, who is the CFO, and say, they're offering these tickets. Do you mind if I go, or do you want to give it to somebody else? Or and we would do it that way. But I would always ask. But I have to make sure that that's being done properly. And I try and never take anything from anybody. Yeah. And just to make it fair. And I just didn't. I just don't do business that way. But
it's a fine line though between hookup and bribe. You know,
it happens. It used to happen much more. I think
that's wild.
It happens now for sure. But yeah, there was a lot of, "Oh, you have to buy stuff from me." You know, I'm like, so.
Okay, last question here. What's an everyday item that most people buy, but that casinos and hotels buy an absurd amount of?
Toilet paper is one of them. When you think you have 3,000 hotel rooms, the amount of toilet tissue that comes through is truckloads and truckloads and truckloads that people don't. And the cases are fairly big. The paper products are decent sized cases, so it's a challenge to store it. A challenge to keep it. And during COVID, couldn't get it. What were we supposed to do? So we had to make plans during that time to try and make sure that our distributors could get us toilet paper to put in the rooms. I know. Yeah. One time I had a VP of hotel ops call me and say, "What are we going to do if we run out of toilet paper?" And just jokingly, I said, "Well, coffee filters are free. We can always put coffee filters in the room." And there was just dead silence on the phone. I was like, "That's a joke," because that's a joke. So
toilet paper, coffee filters, and then we're using hands at that point.
It was. I mean, it was during COVID. It was a challenge to try and get many things, let alone that. But to try and make sure you kept that. But crazy vast amounts of paper products that you wouldn't think.
Yeah.
That we use at a property. Sure.
Well, you talk about COVID and the supply chain disruption, and that's one thing that I'm looking at for Q4 of this year is the stuff that's happening with tariffs right now and the production stops and containers sitting in China. Are we in store for some empty shelves and potentially hotels scrambling to get stuff in Q4 of this year?
That's a great question, and I don't think we're going to know for at least another month. I think another month or two, I think we'll really start to see, the tariffs shake out to what it's going to be or what it's not going to be. But yeah, I mean, that's a possibility if the president continues to push for, the high tariffs that he's looking at for some of these countries. That's a possibility. It could be that. As I'm sure the politicians don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
Administration doesn't want that to happen.
Yeah.
It could. I mean, obviously, it could slow down production if China stops shipping things. I don't think people realize the amount of things that we get from China.
Yeah.
In just retail in the economy, it's a huge number. Much more, we buy much more from them than they buy from us. So it's hard for us to leverage that because they have the upper hand on the number of that we do, the dollar amount that we buy from them. So, but if the two are talking, that's great. I mean, communication is great. At least, it starts a conversation between the two or these other countries. They maybe come to the table and see what they can do. And, the president mentioned yesterday that he thinks the tariffs will come down some, and that he's not going to fire the head of the Fed. So, that kind of helped a little bit. I think ease people's minds a little bit. But you're right. If that continues, there's going to be challenges in the supply chain.
Well, just looking this week, year over year, I saw a stat that said we're down 65% on container ships from China to the U.S. I'm just curious if our global economy dances on the edge of a cliff, how many weeks down 65% can we sustain before we end up with empty shelves and panic from not being able to get stuff? Even if they figure out something this summer, if we have 2 months of container shipments being that low, like containers aren't going back there to get filled up and the stuff's sitting in a factory. Selfishly, I do have a couple of brands and companies I'm involved with that are a little bit overstocked right now. Yeah. And I'm thinking, this might work out well. If the shelves are empty, we'll just get rid of all the stuff,
For sure. No, that's a good point too. But you're right. I think, and another thing, people don't realize how many items that people use every day that come across on these ships, containers on these ships. I mean, these ships hold thousands of these containers at a time, and they come into the port. And if they are not moving, if they don't leave China to come into these ports, it's a problem. And you're right. If that happens for 2 months, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right.
I'm very interested to see how this all plays out.
I'm with you on that one for sure, Steve.
Most people don't understand what the hierarchy in a hotel looks like. You're at the height on the logistics side of the hotel, director of purchasing for 3 decades. Can you walk me through like top to bottom? Like, who do you answer to? Who owns the hotel? And then what that looks like from a decision-making matrix for vendors who are coming in to work with these large casino hotels.
Sure, and it's been much different in certain places than others. I can tell you when I was at Station Casinos, they were really one of the first companies that I'm aware of here in Las Vegas that consolidated their purchasing into one place. So as they continue to grow and multiply, there was Palace and Boulder at one time, and then we grew, exponentially very quickly. And I was part of most of those opening teams that did most of those properties. And I don't think I saw my wife for like 10 years. It was crazy. But, and I think she was fine with all that.
I was going to say, did she miss you? Or
she took a picture of me to make sure
Yeah, right.
when I showed up, she knew who I was. But it was a fun time. I learned so much during that time, and I reported to a young lady there named Sandy Cowan. Sandy was the VP of purchasing for stations at the time. Initially, when I first started, there was a gentleman named Lee Evans that was there, but then Lee left to start a company when the tech boom hit and started a tech company. And Sandy took over. Now, Sandy was a cousin of the Fertitta family. So she was in the Fertitta family, and pulled a lot of weight at the company.
Yeah.
Which was extremely nice because if you had a problem, she would just pick up the phone and call, Frank Fertitta or Frank Lorenzo Fertitta and just, get an answer, or, it worked out very well. And when they consolidated it, it was really helped streamline everything. It helped streamline so much because everyone was in one building. So we had the VP of purchasing, we had the VP of food and beverage, we had the executive chef for the entire company in the same. I mean, like in offices right next to me, right?
Yeah.
So if Sunset Station wanted new china for the buffet, I would lean out and go, "Hey, do we need new china for the buffet at station? At Sunset Station?" They'd be like, "No." I'm like, no, we can't. We don't. So that worked out really.
So it's
really
that
well.
consolidated that level.
It was.
That's wild.
We were all like in the same. Their office initially, executive office, was right behind Palace Station, in a warehouse basically. So, but that worked really well. We could, vendors would come in and like we wanted to pick out new china for a new restaurant for a property we were opening. They could bring it there, and then everyone was there to see it and approve it or not. Right?
Yeah.
So that was extremely helpful. Other properties, not so much. I know when I opened one property, a very large property on the Strip, the hierarchy there was I reported to the VP of purchasing. I think she reported directly to the VP of finance, and the VP of finance reported to the GM at the property.
Okay.
And we had buyers. We had people that their job was just flipping POs. I mean, this was a large property and it was extremely busy. So one day I got an email from the GM asking a question. I was the only one on the email. I didn't copy anybody. So I replied to him with the answer. And then he emailed my boss and said, "Why is this person replying to me? He should understand the chain of command that we follow." I'm like, what is this? So,
wow. So
it was different in different properties, to say the least. I know when I worked at the Hard Rock and the Virgin Hotel, I mean, I reported directly to the CFO who owned the property.
Sure. Okay.
So that was very helpful as well. So if you need anything done, or you need to know, these people want a PO for this much money, can I go ahead with this? I could get the approval. If it was outside of the normal realms of being approved, and our software that we use is a very strict approval process. So certain dollar amounts, like for food and beverage, a certain dollar amount has to get approved by the chef.
Okay.
If it exceeds his dollar amount, it has to go to the VP of food and beverage.
What would those dollar amounts be generally?
I'd rather not say, to be honest with you, because it is so much different at certain properties. I can tell you one property that I was at, I reported to the VP of finance. I had a PO on a Friday for a banquet that was like some little LED lights that they wanted to use. They had a big group coming in, and they forgot to get these little lights to put on the tables. The total was $89, and I was on Amazon. I could have bought it and had it there Saturday morning, and their banquet was Saturday.
Yeah.
So I called the VP, but to get it approved quickly, I knew in the software system it wasn't going to happen that quick.
Yeah.
So I called my boss, who was the VP of finance, and he said, "You're going to have to call the GM to get that approved."
$89.
So I said, 89 for $89? Yeah, you got to call the GM. I'm like, okay. So I'm just different. It's different at different properties.
That is insane. Wow.
I've been in properties where, they're like, I want, someone needs a new limo. We'll just go get it, buy it. Just, didn't even ask what it cost, nothing, anything,
Yeah.
We're buying, 300 slot machines. Well, here's the contract number. Didn't ask what it cost. Didn't ask. We have to have slot machines on the gaming floor. So
That's right.
just order it, get it done.
See, that's more of my style right there. Let's buy it first, ask questions later. Okay.
Get it done. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get it done. I know that's kind of different philosophies at different properties that I've been at.
Yeah. The whole flow of this, and I think myself included, most people don't understand the size and the scale of the logistics of goods that are coming into this, especially food and beverage. The last property you were at, the JW Marriott here in Vegas, is a famous buffet as far as I'm concerned. I've been there many times. I absolutely love it. My kids love it. Right. Help us understand the size and scale of the amount of food and beverage that's coming into that buffet on a daily basis.
Buffets are crazy for the purchasing team and for the food and beverage team. And the JW Marriott has a great food and beverage team. Their restaurants are second to none in the city. Their steakhouse is great. Their Asian restaurant, Jade, is amazing. They have a lot of great restaurants, and their food and beverage team is extremely good. Buffets are a challenge for any property because the food cost to run a buffet is usually much higher than it is to run any other restaurant. Now, you and I both know that back in the day here in the city, buffets in food and beverage used to be quite inexpensive because they used that as an instrument to get people into the property.
Sure.
When I first moved here, I know you could go get, a steak dinner or steak and eggs late night at some of the properties for $5.99.
That's crazy.
A good steak, baked potato, salad, $5.99 all day at some of these places. Then it was like $7.99, and then really when everything became more and more corporate involved, then everything became a cost center. Right?
Yeah.
So they looked at everything. There's no more, $5.99 buffet, $7.99 buffet, right?
That's what the mafia had, right?
Keep
the steak cheap.
It was a different climate back in the day when I first started in the early '90s, whatever. But to run a buffet, the amount of food that comes in is massive. To run those buffets, the staff that it takes to run those buffets is extremely massive. The one, there's a food cost that they use to determine how well the restaurant's doing, and they have to, food and beverage teams are held to account for what the food cost is, and there's a whole formula that goes into that, which I'm not going to go into, but I would say like a normal restaurant, the food cost would be maybe 27-28%.
Okay.
Food cost in a buffet can be like 45%.
Wow.
So which the cost to run that buffet is higher because you have to put out food. And, if I get a restaurant and I usually know how many covers I'm going to do like that night or the next night or for the month, basically. I have criteria I can look at. And the buffet can be consistent, but you never know really for the buffet how much, Taco Tuesday, you don't know how many people are going to eat the tacos or not eat the tacos, or you want the prime rib that you're going to get carved or the ham that you're going to get carved. Or
how much good food goes to waste at a buffet versus a regular restaurant?
It can be. One of the best things that a buffet does, and one of the advantages to having a buffet is, whatever's left over, they'll take that to the employee dining room. And so a lot of that doesn't go to waste.
That's good.
Right? I know places that have, back in the day, we used to donate food that was left over to Catholic Charities or Three Square, companies like that. And then, someone sued somebody because they got sick apparently off food, and then that kind of stopped a little bit. So then we still would donate non-perishable things to some of those folks, but there is a waste there, and then they track it. I mean, the chefs will have to go through after each, when the buffet's there, and they have to write down, how many servings they have left of this, how many servings they have left of that.
Okay.
And so it's tracked really closely, but if they can take the food and give it to the employees, at least, that's, and the employees are happy to take most of that food, because like the JW Marriott, that's a very good buffet.
Yeah.
It's great food.
Oh, phenomenal.
So
is there a general manager that runs just the buffet, like a normal restaurant?
There's like a GM that runs pretty much every room.
Okay.
So they have, the GM usually takes care of the front of the house, which would be everything you see out on the, in the restaurant, on the floor where the tables are and the services. And there's a chef that runs the room, and he takes care of everything.
Okay.
You would see done in the kitchen. So,
yeah.
And it has to be very symbiotic to make that work. If there's not a relationship there like that, then it's very difficult for the restaurant to succeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen somewhere it's like us versus them. Like that's never going to work.
Yeah.
So you have to work together to make that whole process work.
I just think through it as a consumer walking in that buffet, all the food's going to be there. All the food's going to be hot.
It is.
And I'm not thinking about all the stuff that happens in the background to make that possible.
The amount of stuff happening in the kitchen behind that buffet. They have people that are cooking just to backfill every piece of, food that's out there when one pan is about empty. So you've got spinach out there and scalloped potatoes. And when those start to go, empty, then there are people back there who are cooking the food and preparing that food and have pans ready to switch that out as soon as it gets a little bit low or not at the temperature that they want it to be. So it's constant. It's like a constant motion in those buffets to keep that going. And, when the buffet will shut down for like an hour or two when it switches over from breakfast to lunch to dinner. But it's certainly not quiet in the kitchen. You get quiet in the front, but in the back, it's mass production happening.
Always
just to keep up. It is quite the system to see to keep.
Yeah.
Going.
In 30 years that you've worked in purchasing, what's the craziest thing you've ever purchased?
There's a few things. We bought. I used to have pictures of it. I don't have it now. And we bought a life-size replica of a cow, 3 cows, when I was at one of the properties. And they said they were like, just buy this. I'm like, what's it for? And they're like, just buy it. And the GM was like, get these cows. I'm like, oh, okay. So we bought them huge in crates, 3 life-size replicas of Jersey cows.
Love that.
And it was they sat in the hallway for like a year and a half. Nothing ever happened with them, and then they just shipped them somewhere. I don't even know what it was for. When we opened one property, they had a on-site warehouse and an off-site warehouse, and it was a very large property, and it was just chaos to open. It was one of the most difficult. I've opened 9 hotels and casinos from the ground up.
Okay.
This was like the craziest one. One day in the warehouse, off-site warehouse, we're walking and we found an elevator. There was an extra elevator in the I'm like, why do we need an extra elevator? There's an elevator in the warehouse. This is just crazy. Just crazy things like that. I can remember we opened Thunder Valley at Station Casinos outside of Sacramento. And we went out like 3 weeks. The executive team went out like 3 weeks before it opened. Like 3 days before it opened, one of the chefs said, all of my equipment's not here. Like they had like rolling carts to hold hot food and cold food, and it was for the buffet basically, or not. I think it was for the buffet to hold the food in, and a lot of rolling equipment that like speed racks that you put the sheet pans in to hold for the kitchens, and he was missing quite a bit of it. And so I called around and I called the trucking company, and they said, yeah, it was delivered. Everything was delivered. So I called the manufacturer's rep, who was in California as well, and I said, we're missing stuff. So he got on the phone and started calling around and found out the truck that this was on stopped at a truck stop like about an hour and a half outside of Sacramento and was overweight.
Oh, no.
So he just wheeled some of the stuff off of it and left it there.
Wow.
And the stuff that was on the back of the truck happened to be the stuff we were waiting on.
No.
So the guy that was the manufacturer's rep drove out there, and it was still sitting there like 3 days later.
Is that right?
It was like $300,000 worth of kitchen equipment. And he got it on another truck and drove it, and we got it there in time. But
My
this,
goodness.
This guy just like, oh, truck's overweight? Oh, okay, here, take this. Yeah, here you go. Good to go.
So if you want some expensive stuff, hang out at a truck stop
Like,
and see when they're rolling stuff off that truck.
And it was still there. I was shocked it was still there. Like, no other truckers like, I'm not opening the kitchen, so
Yeah.
good to go. But that was some of the craziest things I've seen happen.
What's it like being responsible to keep a billionaire's yacht stocked?
It's interesting, a yacht and jet, or 3 jets. That's interesting. Yeah, I got to buy everything that goes on the jets and the yacht, but I never got to get on the yacht or on the jets. So, I mean, we literally would get steaks cut, certain, whatever these folks wanted, and had it air freighted overnight to somewhere in Florida, and then they would pick it up and take it and put it on their chef. They had a chef on the yacht, so they would go pick it up and go put it on the yacht. And it was funny because the yachts were completely the personality of the people that owned the yacht. So one guy had his crew was all in uniforms and all dressed to the nines, and his crew, and the other one had toys all over the boat, and everyone had flip-flops on and shorts, and that was kind of the personalities of the 2 guys that owned the yachts. But yeah, it was interesting. They would, out of very randomly, they would call and say, "Hey, I need this stuff shipped to this place in Florida, and I need it there tomorrow." And,
Yeah.
So that's what you had to do.
Lifestyles of the rich and famous, but they're always funded by someone who's doing the real work
Absolutely.
to make it happen.
There was a lot of people involved to try and make those things happen, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Scott, you're a wealth of information. I think we could do 4 more 2-hour episodes like we've done here today. It's cool to get behind the scenes, understand the thought process behind all that's going on, and for you to spend a career doing this and to share the insights here, I thank you for it. It's so interesting to me as a former vendor in the space that I am learning things here today about, we shouldn't have done that. Oh, we should have done this instead, So it's just, it's cool to see all that kind of come together. And so thanks for being here and doing the podcast
thank you.
episode.
I appreciate you having me very, very much.
Absolutely. This has been great.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to do it again one of these days.